The announcement did not arrive with trumpets, ceremony, or a royal procession. It came through a palace statement issued beneath the crown seal. Within minutes, one sentence had traveled across the world. Meghan would no longer hold the Duchess of Sussex title. The palace declared the decision permanent, citing powers rooted in the 1917 letters patent. In California, she read the words twice. In London, the doors of the monarchy closed behind her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan sat beside Prince Harry as the statement glowed on the tablet between them. The Duchess of Sussex title, a formal rank granted through marriage into the royal family, had not been paused or placed in abeyance, meaning temporarily set aside. It had been removed. Forever. Buckingham Palace had invoked a fictional reading of the 1917 letters patent, a royal document used to define titles and status within the monarchy, and declared the change effective immediately. She did not cry. Meghan lowered the tablet, placed it face down, and asked whether Charles had approved every word. Harry stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. He walked away, returned, and told her this was not paperwork. It was a message from his family, delivered with the cold precision of law. Charles felt that message before the public saw it. Alone at Buckingham Palace, the king read the final statement beside an unsigned page. His hand stopped above the pen. One advisor warned that retreat would expose a fracture at the center of the crown, the institution built around the sovereign and his authority. The monarch signed, yet the silence afterward felt more like defeat than victory. William received confirmation moments later. The prince closed the folder without celebration, and warned an aide that removing a title would not erase the wound beneath it. His words revealed something deeper. The palace believed clarity would end the crisis, but he knew clarity could harden pain into permanent division. Meghan soon noticed what the statement did not change. Harry remained Duke of Sussex. His rank survived while hers vanished. She looked at him and asked whether the crown was trying to separate them in public before forcing them apart in private. Then another detail surfaced. William's name appeared repeatedly in the palace correspondence, attached to warnings, recommendations, and one intervention that may have shaped the final decree. Before Meghan could understand why the crown had acted, she had to face a truth. Everyone involved was protecting different things, and each believed the title had become the weapon threatening it. To the public, the dispute centered on two words: Duchess of Sussex. Inside the family, those words carried years of resentment, sacrifice, humiliation, and unfinished grief. Meghan saw the title as proof that no one could erase her place in royal history. Harry viewed it as the last formal bond connecting his wife to his family. William saw something more dangerous: a royal identity operating beyond the control of the institution that had created it. Meghan stood alone in her study and lifted a framed photograph from an official engagement. The embossed words beneath it marked her former rank, a title granted through marriage that tied her to royal duty. She traced the lettering slowly, then realized the palace had not merely changed her name, it had declared that chapter finished. Harry watched from the doorway, carrying guilt he could no longer hide. The Duke of Sussex, a peerage granted by the sovereign, still belonged to him, while his wife had lost the matching status they shared. He told Meghan the punishment was aimed at choices they made together. She answered that the crown had separated responsibility from consequence, leaving him protected by birth while she stood exposed. Charles faced fracture over breakfast. The king left Harry's unanswered message beside his plate and stared at the voice note without pressing play. As a father, he wanted to hear his son. As sovereign, the person responsible for protecting the monarchy's authority, he feared one private conversation might weaken the decision he had signed. William carried a different fear into his conversation with Catherine. The prince told her that royal titles could not operate independently of royal service, because status without oversight allowed crown authority to be used beyond palace control. Catherine understood the argument, but she asked whether Meghan had received warning. When she learned the notice arrived only minutes before publication, her expression hardened. Camilla supported Charles's need to appear decisive, yet the Queen Consort warned him that unequal punishment could transform Meghan into a symbol of exclusion. She feared the palace might strengthen the woman it meant to limit. A senior courtier later confirmed the deeper concern in a documented internal account. Meghan's title, he wrote, could carry commercial, diplomatic, and political weight without formal supervision. That possibility terrified the institution more than any family argument. Harry finally called Charles. Silence held the line until the Duke asked, "Why only her?" The monarch answered that the decree concerned function, not blood. His son rejected the distinction with bitter disbelief. The conflict had started long before that call. 6 months earlier, one unscripted exchange at a royal ceremony convinced the palace that compromise was dead. 6 months before the title disappeared, Meghan entered a commemorative reception believing she had been invited as Harry's wife and as the Duchess of Sussex. Palace officials believed she had accepted strict conditions governing her appearance. The misunderstanding lasted less than 20 minutes. Then, before foreign guests and senior royals, an aide approached her with a prepared instruction. Meghan read it, lifted her eyes toward William, and made a decision remembered as the moment reconciliation collapsed. Meghan arrived at St. James's Palace for a Commonwealth legacy reception after weeks of negotiation. The event honored ties among nations connected to the British Empire, and the palace insisted that her appearance remain non-commercial and politically neutral. Harry accepted those terms because the invitation seemed like an opening. He believed one peaceful evening might prove cooperation was possible. An aide changed everything before the principal address. She handed Meghan a revised protocol, meaning the rules governing seating, speaking order, and public designation, and pointed to one brutal alteration. Duchess of Sussex had vanished from the program. Meghan read the page again. Then she crossed the room and stopped William near the picture gallery entrance. William kept his voice low. The prince said the designation had been removed because she no longer represented the crown. Meghan asked why no one had warned her before she arrived. He answered that the program had to reflect her present role. His refusal struck harder than anger, and she accused him of staging humiliation before foreign guests. Harry joined them and demanded that the original wording be restored. When William refused, the Duke removed his event badge, placed it on a silver tray, and said they would leave together. Meghan then addressed the guests nearby. A title, she declared, could not be recognized when useful and erased whenever the palace wanted control. Charles watched from across the room and did nothing. The king's expression changed when a diplomat asked whether the Sussex title still carried official standing. That question exposed the crisis. If the palace could not explain the title, every future event risked another collision. William acted that night. In a documented memorandum sent to Charles, he argued that the ambiguity had become impossible and recommended restoration under strict conditions or permanent removal. Catherine later told him Meghan had reacted from humiliation, not strategy. He replied that intention no longer mattered when every confrontation became an international incident. Palace lawyers examined historic crown instruments, official documents through which a sovereign defines royal status, and built their fictional case around the 1917 letters patent and a new decree. When Meghan discovered that William's memorandum had started the process, she demanded a private meeting. The machinery was moving. Now he would have to defend it to her face. There were no cameras, no public statements, and no rows of advisors to absorb the impact. Meghan entered the Windsor sitting room, with Harry beside her. William was already waiting. The door closed, leaving 4 people inside: 2 brothers, 1 wounded wife, and Catherine, who had agreed to attend because she feared the conversation might destroy what remained of the family. Within minutes, restraint gave way to accusation. Meghan placed a copy of William's memorandum on the table. The document, a formal recommendation sent for royal review, carried his name beneath language describing her title as a constitutional problem. She asked whether he had decided her fate before the lawyers were called. William answered that he had recommended clarity, not punishment. She leaned forward and told him the difference meant nothing when her identity had been presented as a threat. Harry turned on his brother. The Duke accused him of hiding a personal campaign behind constitutional language, words connected to the rules and powers governing the monarchy. William replied that Harry repeatedly turned family disputes into public crises, then blamed the palace for defending itself. The accusation landed hard because both men knew truth, and resentment lived inside it. Catherine stepped between their voices before anger became something worse. The princess admitted that the program change at St. James's Palace had been handled badly. Meghan thanked her, then asked why compassion always arrived after the damage. Catherine had no answer. Her silence confirmed that sympathy existed inside the room, but power stood elsewhere. William said the title could not remain both a private asset and a royal office. an official role carrying the crown's authority. Meghan rose from her chair. She reminded him that the family had encouraged her to embody that position, only to condemn her for remaining visible after leaving royal duty. Harry asked whether his own titles were under review. William hesitated. Then the prince said the recommendation concerned Meghan alone. The silence that followed was more painful than shouting. She removed a monogram pin from her coat and placed it beside the memorandum. Meghan told William to admit the decision was personal, instead of pretending history demanded it. He touched neither the pin nor the paper. The future king replied that the crown could not survive by making exceptions whenever a necessary choice caused pain. Catherine watched Meghan's expression harden. Reconciliation was no longer the purpose. Before leaving, Meghan said the decree would not silence her. William answered that silence had never been requested, only separation between her voice and royal authority. After the door closed, Catherine asked whether Charles truly controlled the process. William's answer exposed a quieter power behind the throne. William had pushed for clarity, but he could not remove the title himself. Charles could approve the decree, yet even the king had been warned that a weak legal foundation might collapse under scrutiny. The true power rested with the small group that translated royal anxiety into enforceable language. At its center stood the Lord Chamberlain, carrying a red folder containing the argument that finally persuaded the monarch to act. Charles remained standing when the Lord Chamberlain opened that folder. The officer, responsible for managing the royal household and advising the sovereign on ceremony, presented three choices: preserve Meghan's title under strict conditions, suspend its public use, or remove it permanently through a supplemental crown instrument, a new royal document added to an existing legal framework. The king favored suspension. It left a path back. The Lord Chamberlain warned that temporary measures would prolong the crisis. Every appearance and project could reopen the same dispute. Charles walked toward the window and asked whether Meghan was being treated differently because she had married into the family rather than been born into it. The legal secretary answered carefully. Harry's status came partly through birth, while Meghan's dignity had been granted through marriage. That distinction strengthened the palace argument, but it did not comfort the monarch. Charles heard legality in the explanation. He also heard inequality. Camilla found him later with the unsigned decree still before him. The queen consort asked whether he was acting as sovereign or yielding to pressure from those preparing for William's reign. Charles admitted that the two had become impossible to separate. Protecting the monarchy's future now seemed to cost him another piece of his family. William met the Lord Chamberlain privately before the final decision. The prince demanded assurance that Meghan's charitable projects would not be obstructed. He wanted separation from royal authority, not the destruction of her civilian work. His restraint mattered, yet it could not soften the concealed clause buried inside the decree. That clause made restoration nearly impossible. Meghan could not regain the Duchess title without a new public act approved by the sovereign and senior constitutional advisors, officials who guide the crown on legal limits. The decision was not a pause. It was designed as an ending. Charles signed after midnight. The king held the page after the pen left his hand and asked that Meghan receive warning before publication. A communications delay between London and California reduced that promise to a message delivered only minutes before release. The palace had secured its legal victory, but it had lost the human aftermath. As dawn reached California, Harry prepared to answer his father as a husband defending his wife. Harry did not wait for advisors, lawyers, or a carefully drafted response. Before sunrise, he called the palace switchboard and demanded to speak directly with the king. Meghan remained in the adjoining room, surrounded by printed statements and unanswered messages. For years, the couple had insisted that they could build a life beyond royal control. Yet the sudden removal of her title exposed how deeply the old institution could still reach into their home. Harry reached Charles after 3 attempts. The Duke asked whether his father had personally approved the permanent language, and the monarch said yes. No hesitation, no excuse. Harry told him the decree humiliated Meghan while preserving his own rank, making her appear disposable while birth protected him. Charles replied that the legal distinction could not be avoided. The call turned darker when Harry asked whether William had threatened to withdraw support from the monarchy's transition plans. Those plans shaped how duties and authority would pass toward the next reign, making the accusation far more dangerous than a family quarrel. The king refused to discuss private constitutional advice, meaning guidance about the crown's legal powers and limits. His silence sounded like confirmation. Meghan entered while the line remained open. She did not address Charles. Instead, she placed their wedding photograph beside Harry and walked away. The gesture cut through every legal argument. This was no longer only about a title. It was about the promise that joining the family would not destroy the marriage. Harry found her packing royal letters into a storage box. Meghan said she would not leave objects around their children that taught them palace approval could be earned through obedience. He tried to answer, but she closed the lid before he found the words. William learned of the call at Windsor and feared his brother would renounce the dukedom in retaliation. The prince told Catherine that such a move would turn a controlled decree into a dynastic rupture, a public break within the royal line. Catherine sent Meghan a private message expressing sorrow over the brutal notification. She read it twice, then left it unanswered. The palace removed the Duchess designation from its website and official biographies. A junior staff member paused before confirming the final update. Across the ocean, Meghan's team replaced the title on charitable pages. She watched one screen refresh without the word Duchess, and finally cried. Harry announced that he would return to Britain and confront Charles. Meghan refused to follow him into another palace to beg. Hours later, she changed her mind. The title could not be saved. Her next choice would not seek restoration. It would take control away from the crown. Meghan returned to Britain without an entourage, and without wearing a single symbol of royal rank. She did not enter through the ceremonial gates, nor did she request an official audience. Instead, she met Harry in a private cottage near Windsor, where no courtiers waited and no legal advisors could shape their words. There, husband and wife confronted a question more painful than the decree itself. Who were they without the identity they had spent years defending? Harry arrived expecting legal papers, arguments, and a plan to challenge the crown. The Duke found none. Meghan told him immediately that she would not contest the removal, and would not ask Charles to reverse it. He stared at her, convinced acceptance would allow the palace to rewrite her history. She answered that fighting for the title would let the same institution define her future. Meghan finally said what she had resisted for years. Duchess had become both armor and burden. The title protected her from erasure, yet it also tied her to every insult, every closed door, and every demand for approval. She had wanted freedom from the monarchy while still carrying proof that the monarchy had once accepted her. Harry lowered his voice and confessed that he defended the title because he had failed to protect her while they served as working royals, members of the family carrying out official duties for the sovereign. Losing it felt like failing her again. Meghan took his hand and told him their marriage could not remain a permanent trial against his family. Harry offered to relinquish his own dukedom, a noble rank granted by the crown, in solidarity. Meghan stopped him. She warned that symbolic destruction could not heal symbolic injury. Anger might create one dramatic moment, but it would leave the palace controlling their next move. They chose another path. Future projects would use their personal names without royal styling, the formal titles placed before or after a royal name. Meghan drafted a brief statement accepting the change without attacking Charles or William. Her restraint stunned advisors on both sides because the palace had prepared for open war. William read it twice and warned aides not to answer. Harry met Charles alone afterward. The Duke said they would accept the decree, but acceptance was not forgiveness. The king replied that he expected neither forgiveness nor approval. He asked only whether he could remain a grandfather to their children. Harry answered that actions, not titles, would decide that relationship. By refusing to fight, Meghan denied the monarchy the confrontation it had prepared to survive. Overnight, the palace display of authority became a global debate over dignity, identity, and freedom. The palace expected outrage, competing statements, and days of accusation. Instead, the defining image was one of restraint. Meghan emerged from a modest London building carrying no royal insignia, stopped beside Harry, and thanked a small crowd before entering their car. By morning, that photograph appeared across international front pages. The title was gone, yet the woman at the center of the storm seemed calmer than the institution that had removed it. The Chronicle captured the shift with 4 words: "No crown, no collapse." Its fictional front page showed Meghan holding Harry's hand and meeting the crowd without hesitation. The headline mattered because it changed the meaning of the decree. The palace had presented removal as authority. The image presented survival. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace before noon. Several hundred people stood behind the barriers, some defending the crown's right to control royal rank, while others carried handwritten signs declaring that dignity could not be withdrawn by decree. The palace, the sovereign's main London residence and administrative center, had become the place where two ideas of monarchy collided. A BBC-style evening broadcast called The Crisis a modern test of ownership. Did royal identity belong to the institution that granted it, or to the person who had lived beneath its weight? A constitutional historian answered in a recorded studio interview that the fictional decree settled the palace question, but deepened arguments about belonging, race, marriage, and legitimacy. Charles watched the coverage privately. The king heard Meghan's calm statement read aloud and asked an aide to switch off the television. Anger did not drive him. Her refusal to attack made the decision feel heavier. Camilla warned that continued silence might appear cold, but he feared another statement would sound defensive and reopen the wound. William recognized the change faster. The prince admitted to Catherine that public sympathy had moved toward Meghan because she refused escalation. Catherine told him the monarchy must avoid triumphal language and demanded that no courtier present the outcome as victory over Harry's wife. He agreed, then rejected a proposal to erase her previous engagements from palace archives. Institutional separation, he said, must never become historical revenge. Meghan's charities replaced royal styling with her name alone, and donations rose sharply. Harry saw the updated pages and smiled for the first time since the announcement. Their work had survived the symbol they once feared losing. Across London, commentators repeated the same conclusion. The Crown had won control of the title, but Meghan had kept control of her story. The world had delivered its judgment. Now Charles prepared one final private gesture, hoping it could save the family even though it could never restore the title. There was no reversal, no secret amendment waited in the final folder, and no concession restored what had been removed. The Duchess title was gone forever. Yet the last chapter did not belong to the decree. It belonged to the people forced to live beyond it. Charles had protected the crown. William had secured the boundary the monarchy required. Meghan discovered that losing the title did not mean losing herself. Charles arranged a meeting at Clarence House with Harry and Meghan. The king chose the residence because it offered privacy without the weight of a palace audience. No lawyers entered. No advisors waited nearby. Even the decree remained outside the room, leaving 3 people to face what the document had done. Charles acknowledged that the method of notification had been cruel. He still defended the decision, but he apologized for allowing Meghan to learn her fate beside the public. She accepted the apology for the manner, not the deeper treatment behind it. Her answer made one truth clear. Closure did not require agreement. Harry told his father that the decree had permanently changed their relationship. The Duke would no longer seek royal approval for his wife, or let palace acceptance define his family's legitimacy. Charles listened without interruption, knowing authority had preserved the institution, while weakening the bond between father and son. Charles then gave Meghan an archive containing her speeches, patronage records, and photographs from royal service. A patronage is public support given by a royal figure to a charity or organization. She accepted the documents because they preserved her work, but left behind the monogrammed case carrying her former rank. The gesture separated her history from the title. William met Harry afterward in a corridor. The prince said he had ordered Meghan's service record protected from erasure. His brother replied that preserving history was not the same as repairing trust. William accepted the rebuke without defense. Meghan returned home and removed the Duchess plaque from her study. She replaced it with a photograph of Harry and their children. The crown had kept its authority, but legal power could not create loyalty, affection, or reconciliation. Harry retained his status but stopped using the dukedom in their independent work. Charles remained sovereign and carried the personal cost. William secured his boundary, but learned that authority without empathy creates instability. Meghan walked away without the title, yet with her voice, purpose, family, and identity intact. The decree ended her dependence on the crown. Pain closed the royal chapter. Freedom wrote the final line. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.